Welcome to the Growing in Love for Life podcast, where it's all about saving and strengthening your marriage and creating the relationship you really deserve and want to have. And now, from growinginloveforlife.com, relationship and marriage coach and best-selling author, your host, Liam Naden.
This is episode 46 of the Growing in Love for Life podcast. Hi everyone, it's Liam Naden here again, and today I want to talk about a very important subject. In fact, it's so important I'm dividing it into two podcasts, this episode and the next episode. And what it is, it's the mindset that you need to save your marriage. You know, most people, when they are faced with having to save their marriage or wanting to save their marriage, they immediately react by asking themselves, what do I do? Or how can I stop a divorce from happening? Questions like that. They go into action mode and they're looking for techniques, strategies and ideas of things that they can do that they hope will make an immediate difference, obviously. But the point is that to want to do something about a situation, a crisis such as saving your marriage, it's a natural human reaction. And it's true for any crisis or danger that we might face in our lives. And let's face it, when the caveman was cornered by a wild animal, it was not going to help for him to simply stand there and create a long-term strategy on what to do. It was move fast or be eaten. And that's simply a choice that he had to make. But the thing is, when it comes to saving your marriage, spending your time and your energy focusing on the doing usually makes things worse rather than better. And perhaps you've noticed this already, that no matter what you do, it always seems to be the wrong thing. And you're not getting the results and reaction from your spouse that you would like. So you're putting in a whole lot of effort into saving your marriage, and they're just not responding. Maybe you're at your wit's end, and when you get to that point, you keep trying harder and harder, yet you feel them slipping or even running away from you. Does this sound like your situation? Well, the truth is that you're not going to save your marriage by trying hard and focusing on doing the right things, even if you knew what they were. And if you're listening to this, I'm pretty sure you don't, otherwise you wouldn't be here. All right, so where does success come from in saving your marriage and avoiding divorce if it doesn't come from doing things? Well, what I found is that the people who are really successful in rebuilding a loving relationship, not just saving their marriage, but rebuilding a loving relationship with their husband or their wife, they all tend to have one thing in common, and that is they have the right mindset for saving their marriage. Now, it might be subconscious for most of them, and in fact it usually is, but this is the one key element which, no matter what your situation, it is going to determine whether or not you are not only going to be able to save your marriage, but it's also going to determine how happy and fulfilling your marriage is going to be for you and your spouse in the long term. All right, so what is mindset? Well, mindset, quite simply, is the way you think. And I find it interesting and true that many great philosophers have made the point that thinking, and I mean real thinking, not just exercising your memory, is surprisingly uncommon. The truth is, most people don't really think. They react to what goes on around them, they remember things in the past or they imagine things in the future, but they're not really engaging in the sort of deep thinking that they need to have if they really want to change the circumstances of their life. Because here's the thing, what you do is based on what you think. And if you want to change what you do, and therefore the results you get in any area of your life, then you need to change what you think first. And most people try to do this the other way around. They react to what's going on in their life, and that determines what they do. They don't realize that it is their thinking, or their lack of it, that is creating their life situation, including all of their marriage problems. All right, now if this all sounds a little bit heavy, the good news is that it is actually quite simple to start thinking in the right way and change the way you think. And when you do that, what you do is going to change automatically. You're going to come up with far better and more effective ways to deal with your problems, and you're finally going to get the results you really want. And nowhere is this more true than in the area of wanting to save your marriage. And in my 2 programs, Stop Your Divorce and Save Your Marriage Relationship Transformation, you'll learn the exact steps to changing your mindset through some very powerful and fun, actually, processes. So if you're serious about wanting to save your marriage, I encourage you to have a look at those programs. All of the details are on my website, which is just liamnaden.com. However, in this podcast, I want to cover the 2 most important aspects of creating the mindset you need to save your marriage. And in fact, these are so important to understand that I'm going to cover them each in 2 separate episodes. So today we're dealing with the first essential element of the right mindset, and that is brutal honesty. Now, I use the word brutal intentionally here because I really want you to get the message that there is honesty and there is real honesty. And brutal honesty is an extreme, if you like, version of real honesty, and that's what we're talking about. So what's the difference? What's the difference between honesty and real honesty? Well, I'm sure if I was to ask you, are you an honest person, you'd probably say that you are, certainly in general. I mean, you probably don't steal, you probably don't tell lies, maybe apart from the odd small one. And I'm sure you probably don't go out of your way to intentionally deceive anybody else. But this isn't the real or brutal honesty I'm talking about. No, brutal honesty is where you face and admit the truth about yourself, who you really are, what is creating the results you are getting in your life, including your marriage situation, and what you really need to believe and do to change things. And brutal honesty comes from true thinking. And it's absolutely essential if you not only want to save your marriage, but if you want to have a happy and fulfilling life. In fact, I'd go so far to say as your success at saving your marriage is going to be in direct proportion to how far you have developed your brutal honesty with yourself. Alright, so how do you create and develop this real honesty, or this brutal honesty as I call it? Well, there are 2 things you need. Firstly, number 1, you need to dig really deeply into who you are. This is so important. In fact, there are 2 words inscribed above the sacred temple at Apollo at Delphi in Greece. And legend has it that 7 of the world's greatest philosophers gathered to write these words. There's only 2 words, but in my opinion, they are the 2 greatest words in the English or any other language. And those 2 words are, know thyself. Know thyself, know yourself. Let me ask you, how well do you know who you are? And I don't mean your name, your sex, your address, your occupation, or your religious affiliation. I mean the essence of you. Who are you? What drives you? What makes you happy or sad? What are your fears? These are just some of the things you need to know about yourself to discover who you really are. And it's only when you do know who you really are that you can start to be honest with yourself and see how your mindset and actions are creating the problems in your marriage situation and what you need to change. So this is what you need to develop that brutal honesty that you really need. So that's the first very important thing. The other thing you need to create the brutal honesty necessary for the right mindset that is really going to save your marriage is that you need to start asking yourself the right questions. And you know, most people, when their marriage is falling apart, are asking themselves the wrong questions. They're saying to themselves, why is this happening to me? Why is my husband or wife acting this way? What can I do to save my marriage? And the truth is that asking these sorts of questions isn't really going to get you anywhere, as you've probably already discovered, because they sort of put you in a loop of thinking and a loop of action that really only makes things worse rather than better. So you need to ask much better questions than these, questions that are going to get you thinking in a different way and will result in far better actions on your part and obviously a far better conclusion. And in my Stop Your Divorce and Save Your Marriage programs, I show you the right questions to ask. I lead you through the process of discovering what you really need to know about yourself and your situation, what you really need to know, and then what to really do to turn things around that will make the difference. And unfortunately in this podcast I don't have the time to go into the necessary depth. So I really encourage you to look at those programs. But here's one question to think about that I think will really help you if you consider it carefully enough. And that question, which has really got two sides to it, but the question is, what do I really want in my life? And do I feel I deserve to have it? Now you might want to write that down, even pause this and grab a pen and paper and write this down. It's so important. What do I really want in my life? And do I feel I deserve to have it? Spend some real time thinking about this question, or these two sides to the question, and write down what comes to your mind. If you really give this question some attention, I think you're going to find you'll be really surprised at what comes up for you, and what a difference it's going to make to your life and your marriage situation. Now, as I said before, I go into a lot of detail about how to develop the right mindset to save your marriage in my two programs, and I get a lot of feedback. In fact, most of the feedback I get from people, or certainly a large proportion about it, is that this area is what has made the most profound difference in enabling them to not only save their marriage, but create a much stronger and happier marriage than they ever had before. I recently, for instance, received this from a lady called Anne in Canada who said about my 30-day program, which is the Save Your Marriage Relationship Transformation Program. She sent me an email and said, this course has made a huge difference to me. It made me realize a whole lot of things I had never thought of and brought them to the surface, and I am now doing much better. So that's from a lady in Canada doing the 30-day program. So if you want to save your marriage, you need to focus on developing the right mindset, the right thinking, and stop being so worried about doing the right things. They're going to come naturally if you get your thinking straight, but you can't do it in reverse. So being brutally honest with yourself is the first important step of the right mindset. And as I said at the beginning, there's another really critical aspect to the right mindset, and I'm going to cover that in the next episode of the podcast. But in the meantime, if you really want or need to fast-track saving your marriage, please have a look at my programs, and you'll find all the information on my website, just www.liamnaden.com. Well, thank you very much for joining me on this podcast. I hope you found this information useful, helpful, insightful, and I hope you'll use it to make a difference in your situation. And I really look forward to speaking with you again soon. Bye for now.